Hello. Oh, it's so good to talk to you again. This is Noreen, and I welcome you to my YouTube channel, and I'm very happy you're here. So feel free to subscribe and like, and also let us know in the comment what you think of the video. So today, what I want to do is read a book with you. It's called Culture Tourism of Rwanda, so you can learn more about the country, Rwanda, the culture, everything, art and craft and everything. So it's a trial. I want to see if we can read this for about 2 hours maybe. I mean, how many pages can you read in 2 hours? So yeah, here we go. This is the cover. It looks very pretty. We're going to read the basic, and if you want me to read something else, another book or comic story, or you want to learn more about Rwanda and the history and culture, please let me know in the comment section, and I'll be very happy to answer or to help you with whatever you need. So yeah, here we go. So it has about, let's see how many pages, 325 pages. There's a lot of places. Oh my god, it's a very rich culture. I feel like I can read from behind. It's beautiful. Everything. What would you like to know? So I'll try to read some of the places that are kind of known, that will tell you what you can learn about Rwandan culture and history, but it's everything. It's the whole book. Oh my god. I'm just so amazed. Oh, it's so beautiful. You see all the pictures. I love books that have pictures. It tells you the story and then shows you what exactly it's talking about. So yeah, feel free to find it. You can find it in any of the libraries, and you will love it. Especially food. Me loves food. I love food very much. Yeah, so let's talk about the historical practices of Rwanda. I mean, I get excited when I'm reading. I'm like, okay, this is something that I know, or that's very interesting. So I might be making small commentaries. So, bear with me. And I hope you like my reading. So, historical practices of Rwanda. This is by Dr. Jean-Francois Munyakayanza. Pre-colonial practices. The history of Rwanda is among the oldest in Africa, in that it functioned as a nation state long before the colonial era. From the 15th to the 19th century, a succession of Rwandan kings gradually expanded their authority, conquering rival chiefdoms, absorbing new populations, and eventually establishing a domain that included all of the present-day Rwanda and parts of neighboring Uganda and Congo. All Rwandans lived in huts of reeds and grass, and even the royal huts, of which you can see majestic reproduction in both Nyanza and Butare, were made of perishable materials. Because of the temporary nature of this structure, one can pinpoint historical sites only through traces of sacred trees in Gabiro that are found where royal residences have been built. These sacred trees indicated where kings lived, were buried and rituals held, while in some places these trees have all but disappeared. Collective memory sustains the past, either through names given to these sites or through the oral tradition. Folk tales recorded by researchers at these sites preserve the cultural richness of this country. In addition to these irregular trees, which are found in different parts of the country, there are many other signs of marking the passage of particular kings, water sources, labeled stones, sacred groves, and caves, and sites where traditional weapons were manufactured. There was a survey conducted by Institute of National Museum of Rwanda in 2008 noted that there were more than 23 locations scattered throughout the country indicating former residences. These are in addition to official residences located in central and southern parts of Rwanda. Through time, history has marked out those monarchs whose impact remains significant, having distinguished themselves through innovative works that greatly influenced Rwanda's development. These royal courts hosted important rituals that every king was obliged to observe, both for smooth running of the administration and for the politic health of this country. Now we have a picture of the trees, Ibigabiro and the kings, and some of the decoration. So the tree locating the king's residence, the royal family, and the large room inside the royal palace mini hut. These are the pictures you have here. The royal palace. During the pre-colonial period, power was centralized in the person of the king, not in a fixed seat of government as it is understood today. The kings used to move from one region to another, creating scattered residences where he would live for some time with one or more wives. When the king left one of these places, there he left a wife with subjects in his service who could exercise some power over the region. At the end of each reign, the main residence of the king, for example, the kingdom capital, would be abandoned and a new capital was established by the new reigning king. This royal court was composed of a number of huts, the main one belonging to the king himself. This was larger and arranged differently from that of its neighbors. It had only one entry point, accessible through an opening in the surrounding perimeter fence. This is where the king sat when he granted audience to those who wished to see him. Behind this main abode were other huts, those of his wives, and one housing the royal milk that was consumed by the king or members of his family, and further hut reserved for ritual beverages consumed by the king at all-night ceremonies. Who doesn't need a drink? This palace was sizable, with a room set aside for the queen mother, who was surrounded by courtiers, and a room reserved for the royal bed. It also comprised a large reception area where the king would gather his dignitaries of an evening. These worthies included major administrative chiefs and overseers of the rituals of the royal court. Although we do not know how long a king would remain at any given site, we do know that he would move several times during his reign to settle new areas. Rwanda adopted the system of permanent residence only at the end of 19th century under King Yuhi V5 Musinga reigns. From the time Nyanza became the capital of Rwanda Kingdom till 1959. Whenever a royal residence was constructed, two trees were planted at its entrance, the ficus, umuvumu, and the sycamore, umurinzi or umuko. When the site was abandoned, its structures would eventually disappear and the trees were all that remained, a sign that it had once been a royal residence. Sacred trees or monuments. Interest box by Dr. Iria Buscaglia. All human beings depend on the environment they live in and on its natural resources. Some cultures recognize this tie and consider some natural places, woods, mountains, rocks, lakes, rivers, hotspots, as sacred, undergoing a process of desacralization, they usually contribute to preserve the botanical and animal biodiversity living there. Balarin Kiriyama Benaccini 2013 1. The Buhanga forest located in Hoti sector in Musanze is a good example. This tiny stain of vegetation, today annexed to the Volcano National Park and preserved as an eco park, used to be a sacred forest. Yeah, you've got to visit this place. It's beautiful. Considered as the dwelling place of Gihanga, the mythical founder of the royal dynasty, this was the coronation site of the kings. The ritual of the king's coronation was made of 3 steps, each of them corresponding to the specific area in the forest, marked by a sacred tree, such as the beautiful red-flowered erythrina, locally known as Umuko or Umurinzi, the guardian, or the Ficus toningi umuvumu in Rwanda. The latter is a giant tree that has a very important role similar to the one of the monument. It allows historians to identify all sites associated with the monarchy, such as the king's or the queen's residences and their places of burial. Unfortunately, several imivumu, the plural of umuvumu, were cut down after the independence of Rwanda as a sign of disdain for the monarchy by the First Republic regime. According to the popular belief, anyone who fells a royal tree would die immediately. While not all of these trees have survived over time, those that remained have grown large and become icons. They are regarded as sacred, respected by Rwandans as relics of the past. There are several reasons a king would relocate to a new site. Firstly, Rwandan kings were polygamous, and by changing their residence, they had the chance to marry new wives from the local chief's family to establish new ties with the different territories. When a king moved to a new territory, his wife would often stay behind and was given power over the area. Having more than one wife was seen as a symbol of success, representing good fortune. The queen mother would rule her nieces into the arms of the king, hoping that they would eventually become the queen mother. This position was important for her, her family, and the whole clan. A further reason was that of security, to prevent people knowing which of his wives was the mother of the crown prince. This was critical for the safety of the prince and his mother. Very clever. Secondly, by establishing a residence in a newly annexed territory, the king secured control of its population, who in turn felt privileged to live in the vicinity of the royal residence. The third reason was economic. Major agricultural and livestock activities were associated with the royal residences, whose locations were chosen in support of these activities. When a region was found to be favorable for breeding, the king would place a herd of sacred cows in Nyambo in the area. Sacred Omovomo groves. When the king died, he was buried in a sacred location. Today, the Rutare sector of Gicumbi district in Musanze DMA, in Northern Province. Other sacred burial sites can be found at Butangamundu in Manga district, along the Heritage Corridor in the Southern Province. An Muvumo tree would be planted at the royal tomb. As people were forbidden to cut down these trees, many have grown to a significant height, evolving into giants, moss-draped monuments dominating the landscape. In addition to these trees that mark royal residences, Omuvumo groves were maintained in some areas of the country. The best known of these is one surrounding the water source of Wuhanga in Bukora Ser, Multi-Sector Musanze district. These are untouchable trees believed to have grown from those originally planted by Gihanga, the first king of Rwanda, credited as the founder of the Nyiginya dynasty. According to the oral tradition, this is the place where the new king was washed. At the moment of coronation, in the presence of Abiru, traditional historians of the royal court, he would bathe in and then drink its water. This would sanctify his reign, protecting him from his enemies, both within and without. Very, very interesting. Bathing and drinking the water. You can see the tree, how it looks like. Groves also relate to wars. For example, the civil war between King Dahiro Tyamatare, the father of Ruganzu Ndori, and his brothers, allied to the king of Bashi from Bunyabungo, DRC, mortally wounded and seeing that he was losing the war, Tyamatare asked his men to hang his body from a tree, which was a curse upon his ungrateful people, with his brothers turning into his enemies. This place, now a sacred grove on the hill Rugarama, is called Rubi Ginyundo. Ruby means bad. The ancient grove on the hill Gishaza in Western Province, where Ndahiro Tamatare's wives and Queen Mother were murdered by the rampaging and victorious Bashi, is known as Mumiko Yabakobwa, meaning the trees of the girls, recalling his despicable deeds. Indeed, oral tradition has it that the king of Bashi and his mother had earlier been saved from captivity and death by Ndahiro Tamatare's father, Mibambwe Mutabazi Sekarongoro. Beautiful names in our culture. Reign names of the kings. Very, very nice topic. In the Rwandan monarchical system, a prince enthroned as king was awarded a reign name in addition to that of his own. 4 such names succeeded one another in the following order: Chigeri, Mibambwe, Yuhi, and Mutara or Chirima, the last 2 alternating to close a cycle, as there was the idea that the names should be given in a precise order to subsequent kings from Chigeri to Chirima. In doing so, a cycle was closed. Each reign name corresponded to the king's policy, be it social or political. For example, the development of farming or food production, the reign name Yuhi and Mutara or Chirima were designated to promote peace and prosperity within the kingdom. Those who bore the reign name Chigeri or Mibambwe had as their primary mission the expansion of the Rwandan territory. We do not have spaces here to speak of all the kings of all the pre-colonial period, so we will limit ourselves to those residing in the collective memory whose names have left an imprint on the Rwandan landscape. Court rituals. Most events during Rwanda's pre-colonial history were accompanied by rituals, particularly at the royal court. No Rwandan could undertake a trip, a wedding, the building of a new home, or the sowing of a new season's crop without consulting the soothsayer. Rwandans traditionally believed in the creator, deity Imana, and in the spirits of the ancestors. Accordingly, you had to ensure these ancestors were in favor of any given project. When they indicated their approval, you went ahead with your project. If not, you deferred it. Divination, kuraguza, was an everyday practice of Rwandan life. Now it has changed. The harvest festival, Umuganura, a ceremony held each year at a particular time at which maturing sorghum seeds were blessed by the king. Anyone who cultivated sorghum before the king was guilty of lèse majesté, meaning they had insulted the king and were guilty of treason. Yeah. The practice of divination. The function of soothsayers was highly developed and they enjoyed high standing in Rwandan society. Everyone at some point needed the service of a soothsayer to solve a problem. Most came away from their consultations satisfied, assured of the reliability of their forecast, regardless of whether or not it ran contrary to their expectations. All soothsayers practice their own form of divination, kuraguza, with methods ranging from inspiration gleaned directly from the spirit world to the reading of the entrails, especially of a chicken, or the fat of the dead animals, kuraguza urujimbo, or throwing little pieces of wood or seed on a flat surface and knowing the future according to the way they fell, kuraguzinzuzi. Some of them consider themselves also capable of knowing the thoughts of the people and predicting the future by reading their head, kuraguzumutwe. Some Rwandans still secretly consult the fortune tellers today, especially for issues related to love and money. Love and money, always. Background to the Umuganura festival and other significant historical festivals. Umuganura needs to be put into context by first explaining the historical background and how other significant festivals relate to it. After the death of Ndahiro Matare, every year in May the country went into mourning, Ichunamo cha Gicurasi, the morning of May. This was a period of fasting and abstinence, commemorating the death of King Ndahiro Matare and the misfortunes that followed. At the royal court, the drums were silenced, there was no rejoicing, no one could marry, and cows were separated from bulls. Festivities, Ichunamuro, in June indicated the end of the mourning period and consisted of a joyous carnival-like festival commemorating the return of King Ruganzu II Ndoli and the liberation of Rwanda by the Savior King. All sadness was banished from hearts and homes, all evil expelled from the country, all Rwandans rich and poor celebrated together, a sign of national unity. Preparations for the great Thanksgiving and communion feast of the harvest festival Umuganura began in August. A member of Mwaka family from Bumbogo, accompanied by a member of the Abatsobe clan, would go to the royal court. There the king met them, sitting on his throne, a powerful Umngiru, the guardian of the esoteric codes, keeper of the royal secret, and generally from the Abatsobe clan, would have his new hose ready for use, wrapped in a mat. The king would take these from him and then give them back, saying, "Take this hose, cultivate, and have a good harvest." Sorghum grown and harvested in the marshes of Bumbogo would then be taken again by a member of Abatsobe clan and mixed with finger millet. This was be taken to the royal court, where other ceremonies were being held. These all involved the king and the queen in the preparation of the spherical shaped bread, irobe, which was then consecrated, divided into bite-sized pieces, and consumed ritually. Fundamental to these ceremonies was the go-ahead given by the king of the entire population to plant sorghum and to close two crucial events of national life: the Icyunamo cya Gicurasi and the commemoration of the arrival of King Ruganzu II Ndoli, savior of the country. The three major historical symbols of Rwanda by Dr. Ilaria Buscaglia. Oof. The Royal Inyambo cow. Look how beautiful these cows are. Beautiful horns. The cow. The cow has an importance in Rwandan society that goes beyond its economic value. It is used in greetings with the greeting Amasho, may you have herds of cattle, is met with the reply Amashongore, may you have herds of female cattle, or Jirinha, may you have a cow. It is also a symbol of female beauty and elegance within many Rwandan dances. Socially, the exchange of cattle ratifies an alliance between two individuals and or groups. Further, offering cattle to someone as a gift is a powerful sign of friendship and the bond between giver and receiver. Cows were even given and received in a settling of disputes. A particular breed of cow, the Inyambo, is specifically reserved for the kings and constitutes a symbol of power and royalty. The royal drum. This is Kalinga drum, big drum. The royal drum. The drum used to be a symbol of political power in many kingdoms. In the Great Lakes region, 4 drums were associated with the royal power in Rwanda and were known as Ngabe. The 2 most important drums were Kalinga, representing male sex and the king's power, and Chimumugizi, symbolizing female sex and the queen mother. Other drums were used to greet the king, to announce audiences with him, and to warn of danger. With the end of the monarchy, no trace is left of these drums. The national flag has replaced the drum as national symbol. Imana, God. Imana is the Kinyarwanda name for the creator deity, though no specific cults are attached to him. Though Imana was understood to be the god of all, Rwanda was seen to be the home of which he returned for the night. Believed in Imana is evident in the choice of some names such as Habimana, God exists, Habyarimana, only God gives birth, powerful meaning, Mukeshimana, I owe my kid to God, Ndagijimana, God is my shepherd, yes, and so on, all referring to the power and the greatness of God. Is amazing. From traditional to modern, colonial and post-colonial practices. It was King Yuhi V. Musinga's reign that bridged the divide between pre-colonial Rwanda and the colonial period. Although the Kingdom of Rwanda was incorporated into the territories of the German East Africa, at the time of his inauguration, there was not yet an effective occupation of its territory by the Reich. From 1897 till 1916, Rwanda became a protectorate of Germany. During the First World War, In 1916 till 1926, League of Nations gave the green light to Belgium to occupy Rwanda and Urundi under occupation regime, whereas in 1926 to 1946, the status of those two territories changed to mandate regime, always under Belgian domination, which the creation of United of Nations, the two territories were attached to Congo Belge, governed by Belgium under tutorship regime from 1946 to 1962, when we got our independence. Under the administration of the Belgian, we see a change in the practice of kingship, most notably the nomadic practice of moving the capital, with the king transition towards a permanent settlement in Nyanza. King Mutara III Rudahigwa welcomed colonial rule, personally converted to Catholicism, and spearheaded the Christianization of Rwanda. A number of changes and upheavals followed through the history of Rwanda, from independence to genocide to finally reclaim their identity as one people and one nation. As experienced today, Rwanda is a modernizing nation with Kigali a rejuvenated city. The modern view of the world differs extensively from the way in which people saw, lived in, and experienced the world in the past. Not only do past symbols and traditions play a role in modernizing rural areas, but they continue to play a role in contemporary society, still retaining function, meaning, and place. As such, a number of cultural and historical markers today remains present throughout Rwanda today. Those not aware of them will not be able to recognize them for what they are. Those who do not see them will experience the history and landscape of Rwanda come alive. The history of Rwanda shifted significantly with the introduction of colonial rule, and then again with the shift toward independence. As with all modernizing societies, the seismic effect of colonialism significantly impacted the tradition and culture of Rwanda. This article serves to draw the reader's attention to the historical remains of the kingship tradition and how they are finding their place in a modern Rwanda. There's a reference page, a lot of other sources and books that you can read. An historical overview to the genocide by Dr. Jean-François Munyakayanza. Genocide was defined in 1948 by the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide as the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Genocide is never spontaneous. In Rwanda, the genocide was a planned and systematic attempt to exterminate the Tutsi. The 1994 genocide against Tutsi was one of the fastest ever recorded, with 1 million Tutsi and Hutu men, women, and children killed only in 3 months. Immediately after, the airplane carrying President Habyarimana and his delegation from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, had been shot down on 6 April 1994, roadblocks were erected throughout the country, which were defended by soldiers of the Republican Guard and Interahamwe, the militia. Nationwide killings began the day after the plane crash. Between 6 April to 4 July 1994, Brutal killings were carried out using gunfire, grenades, traditional weapons such as machete, spears, arrows, and wooden handles into which nails had been driven. That was pretty scary. The background. To understand what happened during that period, it is necessary to situate the events in an historical context. Violence against the Tutsi by Parmehutu, the party of President Gregoire Kayibanda, marked the period from 1959 to 1962, when Rwanda was still under Belgian administration. Many, if not all, chiefs and deputy chiefs had to flee, followed by citizens of Tutsi origin and some Hutu monarchists, either to camps inside Rwanda or to Uganda, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Tanzania. The situation evolved directly as a result of the colonial period. Divisionism based on ethnic groups, initiated and encouraged by Belgium, had been developed as a model of administration. In 1919, the Kingdom of Rwanda, until then a German colony, became a property of the League of Nations. After the Second World War, the country became a trust territory of the United Nations. Historically, all social categories of Rwandan society, Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa, are not ethnic groups as presented in the colonial literature, participated in political and administrative activities, helping the king and queen mother to perform their duties. Between 1926 and 1933, the resident Motherhan was charged by the Belgian government to bring about reforms to modernize the country. Advised by Bishop Leopold Klaas, he decided to dismiss most of the traditional chiefs. The administration structure and their functions were adapted to European model. In the past, there would have been 3 chiefs, one in charge of grazing, another responsible for land, and the third being chief of the army. The political and administrative reform retained only some military chiefs belonging to Tutsi. This reform marked the beginning of political system of exclusion. Prior to this period of any person holding an administrative authority, whatever its level, was seen as a protector of the country's citizen. However, the new invested leaders became instruments of the implementation and the success of the colonial system. Before the arrival of Europeans, the Hutu and Tutsi lived in harmony with the same religion, culture, and language. The Belgian administration transformed the relationship between the Tutsi and Hutu, and they were subsequently identified as hostile ethnic groups. In Rwanda and in many other African countries, the struggle for independence began in 1950s. Traditional authorities, who until then had been resigned to colonial rule, began to demand more participation in the administrative and political decisions regarding the future of the country. This was seen by the Belgian authorities as ingratitude from a favored minority. Rwanda becomes a republic. The First Republic, 1962 to 1973, was marked by a circle of violence and exclusion that resulted in many refugees. Tutsi were a target during the political and economic crisis. Some were killed, their houses burnt, and their cattle butchered. Survivors were forced to flee and exiled Rwanda, lived a hard life in refuge camps, their hopes for a quick return soon fading. Disparate groups of refugees began to organize surprise attacks. These terrorist groups evolved into an organized guerrilla unit and consequently into a military movement nicknamed Inyenzi. Each of the Inyenzi attacks posed a real threat to the young republic, were followed by violence against innocent Tutsi, taking the form of execution, rapes, plundering, and general killings. This violence was justified through the false accusation that the victims were spies for the enemy. In many areas of killings were terrible. In Gikongoro Prefecture, now Nyamagabe and Nyaruguru in southern province, it was estimated that between 8,000 and 12,000 men, women, and children were massacred in less than a week in December 1963. In 1967, the Rwandan army, trained and supported by Belgian officers, finally crushed the Inyenzi rebellion. As a consequence of the ethnic massacre in Burundi in 1972, a group of Hutu activists, mainly secondary and university students, organized unrest in the country. President Kayibanda and his followers explained that the problem they were facing were a result of all the Tutsi in the school, students and teachers, and in administrative office between October 1972 and February 1973. His regime lost its control of the situation. This is pretty good history here. So this is a very good book to read. I'll grab some water. Thirsty. When you read, you need some snacks nearby you, not to get thirsty or hungry and everything. Military coup. During the night of 4th-5th July 1973, Major General Juvenal Habyarimana, then Minister of Defense, took power by means of a military coup. High-ranking officers claimed that their aim was to prevent new massacres. The motivation given to their actions was peace and unity, as a result of which the coup was welcomed by the whole population. But despite the intentions expressed in their speeches, the new authorities did not make substantial changes to the political ideology of the First Republic. In practice, there was no unity and had no peace. Power was seized by soldiers from the north. The people had no political rights, and nothing was done about the repatriation of refugees. Senior officers took power, denying a coup d'etat and calling it a moral revolution. Most of the mistakes of the previous regime remained, and new problems developed. The policy of quotas resulted in ethnicity regionalism. According to this policy, access to education and employment was based on ethnic and regional origin. Top civil servants and the high command of the army and gendarmerie were picked from the home region of the president. Nepotism contributed to the emergence of a clique called Akazu, which included relatives of the presidential couple. Its members did not hesitate to enrich themselves enormously at the expense of the general population. Deceptively, citing overpopulation, the government refused to allow the refugees to return on the grounds that the country was overpopulated. The president used to compare Rwanda to a cup of water. If we add a single drop, he said, it will overflow. But look at us now. We still have lands where people can settle. We were then about maybe 3 million, and now we are 14, and we still have where people can live. Wasn't overpopulated. There was something. Well, the political situation was highly explosive. Corruption, nepotism, and impunity were undermining the regime. In addition, there was no political opposition to demand change. Isolated voices tried to denounce the situation. Felikula Nyiramutarambirwa, a parliamentarian, Father Sindambiwe, the editor of Catholic newspaper Chinyamateka, and the journalist Felicie Semusambi, the three were continuously harassed by security units and ultimately all perished in mysterious road accidents. The Liberation War. The Rwanda Patriotic Army, RPA, the military wings of the Rwanda Patriotic Front, embarked on a liberation war on 1st October 1990. During the night of 4th and 5th October, gunfire was heard in Kigali, but it was discovered that the government soldiers had been shooting in the air to create impressions that the RPA rebels had invaded the capital. It was in fact a pretext to organize the mass roundups of Tutsi. Over 8,000 people of Tutsi origin were left in appalling conditions in Nyamirambo Stadium. Under pressure from human rights organizations, they were freed 6 months later with no apology or compensation. 6 months later. That's crazy. Testing the plan. Between 1991 and 1993, mass killings, which appeared to be testing international reaction to the planned genocide, were organized in different parts of the country. The Bahima of Mutara and the Bagogwe of Chibirira groups assimilated into Tutsi were systematically eliminated. In February 1992, the Interahamwe, a Hutu paramilitary organization, killed hundreds of Tutsi in Bugesera. The instigators of the massacres were arrested but released after a few days. Local and international human rights organizations denounced the killings. Some of them, such as Paris-based International Federation of the Human Rights, Fédération Internationale des Droits de l'Homme, calling them genocide. The genocide. Immediately after the president's death, some high-ranking officers tried to reorganize a coup d'etat, but they were discouraged by representatives of the UN Secretary General and the international community. Instead of trying to prevent the genocide, the UN troops left the country. Only 250 peacekeepers stayed behind. Far too few to help the victims. In under 100 days, 1 million people were killed. They were of Tutsi origins and Hutu who were not committed to the genocide. By 4th July 1994, Kigali City was taken by RPA fighters, and on the 17th July, a government of national unity was put in place, from which parties involved in the perpetration of the genocide, mainly MRND or the CDR, were excluded. The Rwandan state had collapsed. Territorial administration did not yet exist. Civil servants had died or were in exile in neighboring countries. Economically, there was no trade or financial activity, and banks had been plundered. The aftermath. It was a hard task for the new government to resolve the situation. Survivors were living in shocking conditions. Victims of the genocide had not been buried in dignity, most having been thrown into latrines or buried in mass graves under the supervision of the administration of the city of Kigali. To ensure that the victims are never forgotten, more than 400 memorial centers have been built all around Rwanda. Initially, this was implemented by the government. Individual survivors and Ibuka, the Umbrella Association of Survivors, but the whole population is now involved thanks to the will of the Rwandan people to be united. Never forget. The government, in creating the genocide memorial sites, aimed to restore dignity to victims and give survivors an opportunity to honor their memory in memorial sites throughout the country. Family members of survivors, other Rwandans, and visitors came to these burial grounds to lay wreaths. The memorial sites are contributing significantly to the implementation of the policy of unity and reconciliation. The principle of never again is finding a place in hearts of Rwandan citizens. In the words of Louise Mushikiwabo, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, says, in remembering, we find powerful inspiration to build a strong, hopeful society capable of resisting the re-emergence of state-sponsored hatred, pernicious foreign influence, and violence that all but destroyed us 20 years ago, 7 January 2014, at the launch of Kwibuka 20. We must never forget what happened here and why. We must never forget how the world stood by, capable of intervening to prevent or reduce the slaughter, but unwilling to do so. We must never forget the million lives lost, the countless lives destroyed. Memorial sites. Throughout Rwanda, there are several memorial sites to be found. This guidebook highlights some of the most prominent sites where a tour guide can accompany visitors, thereby providing additional information. Most of these prominent sites include exhibition. Although it is only a small selection of memorial sites that are highlighted in this book, all of the genocide memorial sites in Rwanda are important. A list of reference from African Rights, Breckman, Brauman, Prunier, Munyeshuri, Ndahiro, Tom, Veldier, Vishavi. There's many people who had something for this. Now we are going to talk about traditional ceremonies and custom. I feel like this dance, since I see beautiful women here, by Dr. Ilaria Buscaglia and Dr. Jean-François Munyakayanza. Rwandan customs have been observed by several generations over the centuries. While many of them have changed, the significant ceremonies still remain the key elements that have always been present. The rituals followed involve the extended family and the whole neighborhood, both young and old. Whenever there is a marriage, a birth, or death in the family, the neighbors also participate in the celebrations or rituals. Children are taught cultural values from an early age. Among these is the notion of gender equality. Boys and girls learn that men and women are complementary, each with a specific role to play in the family. This is a very good thing that we're teaching our children. Traditional religion and medicine. You see, I think this would be like medicine and stuff we used in healing people. Traditional Rwandan spirituality holds to believe in a creator deity, Imana. It is also understood that the spirits Immanuel are deeply involved in the life of the people. As such, the practice of spirituality focuses on these present and active spirits. This is typical of African traditional religions in general. Here we briefly explore the historical Rwandan spirituality, specifically the possession cult called Kubandwa, which governed individual, family, and social life, further evidencing the prevalence of spirituality The term Imanga referred to both the spirit and medium, the person possessed by the spirit. The possession cult of Rwanda belongs to a wider religious system spread throughout the Great Lakes regions, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, and eastern Tanzania. The daily practice of spiritually centered around Kubandwa, a form of divination and shared unifying practice. Dyangombe. The most important spirit in Rwanda was Dyangombe, who was a human who transitioned into a god after death. Dyangombe is understood to be the king of the spirits, and the Rwandans have preserved his story. The legendary hero and famous hunter Dyangombe was an intermediate between people and God. He was honored by an exclusive cult, Kubandwa. The initiates desired protection against illness, sterility, and harmful influences of the dead. There were two ranks: simple initiation and confirmation. As the king could not become an Imanga, a chief Imanga was chosen from the Abayumbu's family to become a representative among the great dignitaries of the royal court. Divination, which consists of consulting the spirits of the ancestors to understand their wishes, give instruction to an individual or family on the behavioral to follow throughout their lives. The diviner, Umupfumu, is sometimes an old man, sometimes a woman. Some type of divination are simple, like that which uses animal fat. Others are more complicated in order to establish magical contact. The diviner collects the saliva of his client at the beginning of the seance, or receives it in a very small vase when the client cannot be there in person. When the result is favorable, the diviner makes a charm with the remainder of the divinatory material. The aid of another specialist is sometimes necessary. An exorcist, for example, in case of a client tormented by an ancestral spirit, or someone who trusts spells when the client is the victim of an act of society. This is pretty good. I mean, if you have learned anything about Rwanda, it's that there was a lot of things happening from, I don't know, a long time ago, like 1400s. Now until today, there's a lot of change. The country is growing. We're getting somewhere. A lot of buildings. Some of the practices we no longer do, but it is very, very interesting to see what this looks like. Seeking holism, spiritually and physically. Sometimes you have to be there. To seek health and holism, Rwandans would consult mediums, the Imanga, and the fortune tellers, healers, and the Bapfumu. The former understood their prescriptions to stem from supernatural sources, while the latter from skill and learning. Rwandans would consult the mediums, Imanga, to resolve problems such as disease, sterility, or famine. In a Kubandwa session, after listening to the questions, the mediums would consult the ancestors Wazimu through trance dancing. These Kubandwa sessions were not limited to the personal lives of individuals, but also played a role in the national well-being through being an integral part of the major public ceremonies related to the monarchy, such as inauguration rituals. The other kind of healer was the Bapfumu, who could make several kinds of divination. They could read entrails or the fat of the dead animals, especially chicken, or throw wooden piece or seed on the flat surface and predicts the future based on how they fell. Some even claimed to be able to read the minds of the people coming to them. Some Rwandans, they still consult Fumu storytelling fortune tellers today. The Bafumu combined divination with the administering of specific medicinal plants, though several practices have disappeared or been discredited. The practice of herbalism has been revitalized. Very good words, English. Traditional medicine has been integrated in the health system as an important component of Rwandan primary health care. The 2010 policy of traditional medicine recognizes 3 official practitioners. 1. The health Shoddy practitioner, HT, a person acknowledged by the community of competent to provide health care by means of plants, animals, and mineral substances and other methods based on the social culture and religion belief. The second is the health assistant or traditional midwife, regarded by the community as competent to help women giving birth, more like midwives. And the third, traditional herbalist, who knows how to prepare herbal medicine to sell in the marketplace. So you could go to any market and get your medicine or get yourself a fix of something to consume for your disease or for anything. Now we are going to talk about gender and in Rwandan culture. Gender is very important. Traditionally, Rwandan children were taught about the roles of men and women in society. The man was seen as defender of the family, while the woman represented the heart of the family. The man was responsible for protecting the family against enemies, wild animals, and anything else that might harm it, such as famine. The woman took care of the family's daily activities, including education of the children, ensuring the domestic animals were safe, welcoming visitors, and taking care of them. Boys and girls were prepared for these roles from an early age. The girl learned how to build a secure home that was welcoming and how to maintain good relations with the neighboring countries. Neighboring households. The role of a woman was so important that there was a saying, whoever has the best wife has the best home. I think it's still true till now. The boy was shown how to ensure the prosperity of the family, how to live within the community, and strive to be the pride of his parents and the extended family. He was taught to be prepared to fight, to defend his country, and so die for it if necessary. Before marriage, young Rwandans had to be familiar with these key principles. In a family, there's a man and a woman, and children belong equally to both parents. They have to cooperate and performing his or her special task, should either one of them neglect his or her duties, the home will be weakened. The parents have to discuss and be in agreement about the education of the children and when they are ready to be married. Young people were taught that adherence to the following principles would lead to harmonious marriage: mutual respect, dialogues, collaboration and tolerance, tranquility and security. Marriage in Rwanda, a beautiful topic. Marriage is a traditional and central social institution in Rwanda. Through, through it, an alliance is forged between two lineages, and children are seen to become adults. After getting married, a girl becomes a woman wife, and a boy becomes a man husband. The importance of marriage is highlighted by the elaborate tradition in a recurring preparation over months or even years, involving great expense and a number of people. Marriage is also seen as the social environment in which procreation ought to take place. That's Marriage in Rwanda has undergone several changes related to Christianity and the introduction of civil legislation. However, the old rituals are still evident in contemporary urban marriages. Marriage is still seen as an important rite of the passage for all Rwandans today, both in rural and urban areas. The same basic structure is followed, but it takes over a much shorter time period. In modern society, all children, including those born inside marriage, including those born outside of marriage, have legal rights.
Well, in case you haven't noticed, I failed to read for the whole 2 hours. But I'm very, very happy and interested in reading more pages of this book. So, this is another record, Luta Continua. And we're talking about my favorite topic here. It's looking for a wife, asking for a wife. Traditionally, marriages were arranged for children after onset of puberty. The boy's parent would send an intermediary, usually an uncle or a family friend, to establish whether he was ready to get married. If he was deemed ready, the intermediary would identify a suitable girl. This intermediary would investigate family's morale, the harmony between the parents, the children's educations, the mother's character, seen as influential for a child development, their socio-economic condition, as well as the girl's behavior, her quality as a future wife, her health, activities, morality, modesty, deference to elders, obedience and collaboration in the household chores, etc. Once a suitable girl was found, the spirits of ancestors will be consulted through a ceremony. In this ceremony, an ancestor will be identified in whose name the marriage will be celebrated. Once the approval of the ancestors was obtained, the process of asking for a wife, gusaba umugeni, could begin. The intermediary, along with other men representing the boy's family, would initially visit the girl's family with jugs of bananas and sorghum beer. In turn, the girl's family would then conduct their own inquiry into the prospective groom's family. Should no obstacles to the marriage arise during these inquiries, a second meeting would take place. Further arrangements would concern the amount of bride's wealth that would be paid by the groom's family to the brides. Payments would range from number of cows to the sale of farming equipment to the rendering of agricultural labor services. Once the amount was established, a date for the official demand and delivery of the bride wealth would be set. The wedding ceremony. On the set date, a delegation from the groom's family went to the bride's home bearing jugs of beer, traditional baskets, and the jugs of demand, ekibindi kisabiro. This group would comprise relatives and family friends chosen by the groom's father. One older man would be the representative speaker and would officially demand the bride. A similar representative would be chosen by the bride's father and would represent her family during the ceremony. The bride and groom would not be present during this ceremony. The main component of this ceremony was the discussion between the family representatives, followed by the delivery of the bride's wealth. The bride's family, playing host to the delegation from the groom's family, would pretend not to know the reason for their visit and would pretend that the bride to be was not ready for marriage or was not to be found. Overall, this is a light-hearted event meant to entertain everyone present. What followed in Misango was the delivery of the bride's wealth. If the payment included cows, a traditional poet would be called onto stage to declaim the names of the cows amazina y'inka in the form of poetry in which the qualities of the cows were celebrated. To give a better sense of the light-hearted mood of the ceremony, the following are some imisango from colonial times. Groom's umukwe mukuru, giving the hoe to the representative of the bride's family. I have come here not only to bring you beer to calm your thirst. Here you have a precious implement with which you will cultivate better and produce good harvest. Now listen to me, because I have something to say. The name of the father of the boy has sent me here. Here are the beer, the hoe, and the cow that he asked me to bring to you. Your family has lived together with ours. You are friends and brothers. We have helped each other in times of sorrow and need. But this relationship has not been recently initiated. It dates back to the ancient times. Then they say the clan of the bride's lineage have given a lot of daughters to our sons so far. I can't even count the number of women that have become mothers of our children. The boy's father is now asking you to renew this tradition. He's asking you to give us another daughter to marry. Bride's umukwe mukuru. It is true. What you have just said is important. What you have declared is true. The relationship between our clans dates back to an old times. And on both sides, several families have exchanged women. However, this time I'm sorry to be obliged to say no. In our family, several girls have reached the marriage age, but for each of them, we have already received the bride's wealth. Their father wouldn't like me to antagonize those noble people to whom we have already given our word. Groom's mukuru. We are not asking the hand of a girl who's already engaged. Ours is surely free. We have got the right information. Bride's mukuru. Which girl are you referring to? Groom's mukuru. Her name is, then they say the name of the girl. Bride's mukuru. Oh, you mean her? I'm sorry, I was not considering that one, but she's too young. She has not reached marriage age yet. This is why I didn't refer to her when I answered you. Groom's mukuru. It doesn't matter. You think she's not the right age to get married. However, we ourselves think that she's totally fine and we wouldn't want her to be any different, and we are more involved than you in this issue. Bride Mokoro. Very well. Since you want her so much, I'll give her to you. Then shouts of joy will be followed. This ceremony formalized the betrothal, and the date for the marriage would then be fixed. In the period between the betrothal and marriage, both families underwent religious rituals, kubandwa, and made offerings guterechera to their ancestors. Traditional medicines were administered to the boy and girl in order to ensure their safety after marriage and protection of their lineages. The groom's relatives made sure that the hut in their compound where the couple would live after their marriage was ready. The bride's family helped her assemble all the possessions she would take to her new home. On the on the even on the evening of the marriage, paternal aunt, cousin, old women, and married friends were invited to the girl's place. They would advise her on her future life, including how she was to behave towards her husband, his mother, how he was to welcome visitors, and how he should prepare food, and gave her sexual tips. Yeah. Thereafter, the girl was prepared for the next day, including shaving her hair, except for the piece socially designated her as a girl, washing her and rubbing her with cow's milk butter to make her skin soft and shiny. A marriage in the night. The bride would be accompanied by entourage consisting of married men, boys, sons, girls, as well as a sister or a friend who would assist her throughout the ceremony, umushingira. The bride's parent would stay at home and wait for the entourage to return and tell them about it. Rich girls would be carried to their weddings, while others would walk. This is terrible. In either case, the bride was hidden by a mat so that no one could see her. The entourage would time their arrival at the groom's house at night, and the bride and the other girls would be secluded in a hut. The men were welcomed inside the groom's parents. The representatives of both families would give speeches and therewith officiate the alliance between the families. Yeah. The families would spend hours talking together and drinking beer. Around midnight, the father of the groom would call his son, ordering him to perform the central act of formalizing the union. Spicy. The groom would enter the girl's hut holding a branch in his one hand, a mixture of herbs and milk in his mouth. Interesting. He would identify his bride among the girls, then spread the liquid on her and tie the branch around her head, saying loudly, Ndakurongoye, I marry you. This will be followed by cries of joy and congratulations from those gathered around. After the bride's entourage departs, the groom would have to consummate the marriage. The bride, slippery from the batter, would have to fight strenuously to defend her virginity, while the groom, egged on by friends and brothers eavesdropping outside, would have to subdue her. The next day, the groom was welcomed by his family as a hero and rewarded with a cow. Okay, milk for the bride. Post marriage rituals. Several rituals would take place after the marriage itself in order to transform the girl, who was still a bride, into a complete woman wife. Traditions include seclusion of the wife, her gradual reintroduction to domestic life and duties, through the through to the husband cutting her hair, including the last piece of hair, making her as a child. These rituals will be finalized after a couple of months with the visit by the couples to the bride's family. Birth and naming. In Rwandan society, a birth is an eagerly anticipated event. According to the custom, although a child belongs to the father and the mother, she also belongs to the extended family. In addition, all the adults are responsible for all the children in the neighborhood, not just their own. In the week after the birth, the extended family and neighbors would come to visit the mother, bringing sorghum flour and bundles of wood to warm the hut. Bringing On the eighth day after the birth, ceremonies were held to name the newborn. The family prepared traditional sorghum and banana beer for the adults of the village, and some of the guests would bring drinks. All the children of the village, aged between 3 and 8 years, would come to share food, generally sorghum dough and beans mixed with squash. After the adults had chatted and drunk the beer, each of the children present would propose a name. Thereafter, the parents of the baby would announce the name they had chosen for their child. The guests would leave knowing the true name of the child. The essence of the ceremony is publicly announcing the name of the newborn. I mean, these days, these rituals are no longer happening. You go to the hospital knowing the name of your baby, and you have to register your baby before you leave the hospital. So, I guess this is one part of the culture that kind of evolved. Now, third topic, death. Rwandans accept death as an inevitable part of life. There's a proverb that says, when the owner of the bracelet comes, you just reach out. In other words, God is removing the bracelet from your arm and you must go with him. Ceremonies connected with the burial of a parent were different from those for a child or someone who died before marriage. Ooh, okay. In normal course of events, a father sensing the end of his days approaching would ask for beer to be prepared without giving a reason. When it was ready, he would call his children together and explain the division of his estate. He would divide his property and his cattle equally among his male children, keeping one part for his wife. After her death, that portion would go to the person he had designated as the head of the household. Traditionally, the girls receiving nothing because it was assumed that they would marry and their husband's inheritance would provide for them. In the case of divorce, they would return to their families and be taken care of by the head of the family. This is why the new head would eventually also inherit also the mother's share of land and livestock. Okay. Once the issue of inheritance was out of the way, the father would quietly wait to die. After his death, his family immediately organized the funeral. One of his children would go ahead of the father's body into the tomb, symbolizing that the child is accompanying the parent. A family representative would announce that the family was giving him a cow as a sign that he expected to get out of the grave. person who died before being married was buried with charcoal, so his spirit would not return to disturb members of the family. The duration of the mourning period was 8 days for anyone who died after starting a family, and 3 days for anyone who had not yet started a family. The family would mourn the death of the father or the mother for 40 days. After a king's death, all activity in the country ceased during the mourning period. No work was done in the fields. No bulls were separated. The bulls were separated from cows, and men did not have sexual relations with their wives. When the mourning period of 40 days was over, the surviving spouse was allowed to remarry. 40 days. A week of mourning. In modern times, the mourning rituals have been modified, but they still retain the spirit of compassion for the family members, neighbors, and other acquaintances. In the past, during the mourning period, people did not wash and they were covered in ashes. Today, people rather spend the evening indoors with family, playing games such as cards or ijisoro, or just chatting, sometimes telling jokes to lighten the mood. A week of mourning has been created to commemorate the genocide committed against Tutsi in 1994 instead of the traditional 40 days for the final closure of mourning. And the government designated that every year from 7th to 13th April would be an official week of mourning corresponding to the 100 days of genocide, which is observed from 7th of April to 15th July. 21st July. And I'll put 15th. Portrait of Alexis Kagame, Anna Vijayamami, Piscadia. These are all the references. So if you could find some of these books, the references for all the information. Yay! Traditional Rwandan food and beverages. Yes! Don't we like food? This is sorghum. These are sweet potatoes. Then you have yams. And then we have, of course, bananas. Traditional food. When foreigners first arrive in Rwanda, they were usually puzzled, yeah, by the absence of food vendors on the street and by not seeing people eating in public. Snacks, all of them the result of Asian or European culinary influences, such as chapati, meat or vegetables, samosas, small cakes of fried beignet and mandazi are available in small food stores, but they are usually consumed indoors, accompanied by ichai, tea, inchushu milk, or ichivuguto buttermilk. The basic Rwandan diet is composed mostly of carbohydrates, such as cassava, bananas, rice, maize, potatoes, and sweet potatoes, combined with beans, which are the most important source of protein. Traditionally, the preparation of food did not involve any oils or spices apart from the local variety of hot pepper urusenda. The cultivation and consumption of different types of vegetables such as carrots, peppers, eggplants, and greens, while not common in the countryside, has been encouraged by the state through several campaigns aimed at improving the health of the population. Look how yummy this looks. Oh my god. One of these campaigns aimed to have a kitchen garden, akarima kijikoni, for every rural Rwandan family. A Rwandan specialty is a kitchen stew prepared with bananas, vegetables, and peanuts. It is called igisafuria. which literally means the cooking pots, because the ingredients are all cooked together in the same pot. Because other dishes are actually part of a wider East African tradition, such as isombe, slightly bitter cassava leaves that are crushed in a mortar and cooked with onions, vegetables, and added to beans, fish, and sometimes goat meat, and posho, wild maize dough, that is eaten with vegetables or meat sauce. Eating meat is a sign of high social status. Rural or poor people have it only on special occasions, such as at weddings or other ceremonies. Dried cassava is also used to make flour, from which sticky dough called ubugari is prepared. Other popular traditional dishes include ubugari, which is made from ground maize, mixed with water and cooked into porridge-like consistency. Ibitoche is a yellow porridge-like food made from pulped, baked, or boiled plantains. Both ubugari and ibitoche have neutral flavor and are often eaten with a vegetable or peanut sauce or goat's meat. Fruits in Rwanda are diverse and delicious. Passion fruit, amatunda, tomatoes, mangoes, papaya, sweet bananas, imineke, and pineapples, but they are expensive and not commonly consumed by local people. Moreover, they are usually seen as food for children and women and rarely consumed by rural men, even ceremonially. The small sambaza fish caught in Lake Kivu is popular and regularly eaten fried or dried. Rwandans usually prepare their food simply, combining and decorating their food. In general, Rwandans are quite picky about what they eat. For example, they do not drink or make any dairy products out of goat milk. And until very recently, they seldom, if ever, ate pork. These days, roasted pork is served in some bars in town. You can see the fruits, the tree tomato and the maize dough flour, amandazi and some sambaza. Taboos. Traditionally, superstitions existed around eating food in public, and these are still evident today. Rwandans usually eat at home, and even on ceremonial occasions such as weddings, people usually do not consume full meals. They are offered drinks and a piece of cake, and sometimes meat and roasted potatoes. Usually, the groom does not eat in the presence of his mother in law. Those were long days gone. These taboos, as well as general cultural suspicions, can be linked to the beliefs concerning witchcraft and poisoning. The latter is traditionally regarded as the cause of many diseases and a powerful means of disposing of one's enemy. To reveal what you eat publicly is seen as exposing yourself to danger. Well, that's true. These superstitions date back to the pre-colonial days of the kings, when it was customary for the king not to eat in public to reduce the chance of being poisoned. Umuganura. Many foods are grown from seeds, but they are seed plants on which most traditional meals are based. Each year on 1st August, the Harvest Festival or Muganura begins with a celebration of important seeds in Rwanda, such as uburo, millet, amasaka, sorghum, isogi, a wild species of spider plant, and inzuzi, pumpkin seeds. The wild plant, spider plant. This is interesting. First time for me too. A contemporary Rwandan aperitif. Beer, brochettes, and bananas. You can see how highlighted it is. I love pictures in the book. After a day of work, Rwandan men enjoy sharing beer with their friends and colleagues in one of the many bars scattered around the country, in both urban and rural areas. In the cities, there's a wide choice of bottled beers which are served cold or warm. Locally produced beers are Primosko, Amstel Mitzing, and Turbo King. Only sorghum or banana beers are available in the countryside. Hanging vegetables leaves above the bistro entrance indicates that beer is available. Yeah. Um, Beer is usually accompanied by goat brochette skewers, which can be prepared from either the meat or the entrails zingaro and fried bananas. Entrails, yeah, good word. Informal bars, which are known as cabarets in Rwanda, without live entertainment, as the word might suggest in English, are not considered suitable places for women unless they have accompanied their husbands. Alcoholic drinks are traditionally associated with men, and alcoholism is a major problem among men, especially in rural areas. Traditional beverages, we have milk, we have sorghum beer, we have akarusho, processed beer, but really good. Then we have ubushera, I believe. So, milk, sorghum beer, akarusho, the processed beer, it tastes really good. And then we have ubushera, or, you know, for non-alcoholic, I'd say. Rwandans preferring milk and beer, and nowadays soft drinks are included. At all social events, both formal and informal, there's never a shortage of crates of soft drinks and beer. Rwandans would not invite guests to their homes if they did not have drinks to offer. Social life was traditionally constructed by passing around a calabash filled with local beer, from which everyone drank using the same straw. Not now. Modern hygiene has changed this practice, yes. But the symbolism endures. Drinking together still has a cultural meaning associated with sharing and solidarity. At weddings, the main activity is invariably drinking. In addition, all the phases of the marriage ceremony are marked by exchanges of beer and other drinks between the lineages of the bride and the groom. Traditional drinks in Rwanda are amata, milk, urwagwa, home-brewed banana beer, imitobe, banana juice, ichigaje, sorghum beer, and ubushera, an alcoholic sorghum drink. Urwagwa was traditionally drunk out of small calabashes through a wooden straw, and ichigaje was often offered in a big ceramic jug from which people drank in turns during ceremonies. The Rwandan government has been trying to regulate the brewing of traditional beer for hygienic reasons, but it still represents a significant source of income for rural families. Quality produce. We have coffee, tea, bananas. We can grow everything, literally. Rwanda produces some of the highest quality coffee in the world. The country is blessed with ideal coffee growing conditions: fertile volcanic soil, equatorial mist and sun. Rwandan coffees are deliciously sweet and bright, with clean citrus characteristics, or plush and full of chocolate, malt, and berry flavors. Yummy. The growing of coffee in the country dates back to Belgian colonial rule in the 1930s, but in the 1990s, during the genocide, coffee production virtually ceased. Thereafter, Rwanda rebuilt its coffee industry. This made it easier for farmers to participate in the industry, prioritizing coffee washing stations and providing training and assistance in the cultivation techniques. As a result, not only has the cultivation process improved, but Rwanda is now producing some of the world's finest export coffee. Yes, 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 yes. This is coffee beans. Then tea. Rwanda is blessed with ideal tea growing conditions, a high altitude, nutrient rich volcanic soil, a humid climate, two rainy seasons, and a mountainous terrain. As a result, it produces tea for exceptional quality. Tea production in Rwanda dates back to the 1950s, since when the industry has received much acclaim, widely known as strong export product. It has been a key ingredient in the rebuilding of the Rwandan economy since genocide. Rwandan tea is developing a strong reputation with international demands for tea increasing. This industry is set to grow. Look at the farms of tea a lot across the country. Bananas. A common sight in the country, bananas are a major crop that is widely produced. As such, the growing of forms a large part of the life in many Rwandans, contributing not only to the economy but also to the diet as a staple food. Excuse me. A number of varieties of bananas can be found in Rwanda. The dessert banana is called kamaramasenge. The lady finger is a small sweet banana with a very smooth skin, and inyamunyo, a plantain, is a cooking banana that is usually steamed, roasted, or fried as chips. Excuse me. Inhashi. Bananas have a slightly bitter flavor and made into beer, urwagwa, or juice imitobe for daily consumption and special celebrations. Banana leaves are also crafted into furniture, household goods, and toys. Banana leaf craft includes table mats, food trays, gift cards, or even soccer balls. Have you tried one? It's amazing to shoot at. Alright, traditional dress. Look how beautiful these ladies are. Yeah. Oh, amazing. This is by Dr. Ilaria Buscaglia. As anthropologists like saying, clothing is a social experience. Material culture and body surface not only have a symbolic meaning, but are also a way through which social classes are created. Gender are socially constructed, and power and privilege are reinforced or even contested. Look at the men making clothes. They use a tree to hit some part of the animal, like animal skin or the back of the tree, to make something to wear. Traditional clothes. In pre-colonial times, people used to wear skirts to cover their genital parts. These were made of bark cloth or animal skin according to the social class they belonged to. The Hutu used to wear goat skin and bark shirts. Twa people usually wore antelope, sheep, or goat skin, whereas Tutsi wore cowhide, leopard, or lion skins, symbols of wealth and power. Cow, leopard, or lion skin belts were worn by both Hutu and Tutsi women, the only difference being the fringes for the latter. Ceremonial clothing, king's clothing, dance dress. The difference if you can tell the difference. The traditional Rwandan women's dress imishanana and imikenyero, which is now used mostly as a ceremonial outfit, weddings, church services, or by dancers, is evidence of an Oriental influence, looking very much like the Indian sari or Middle Eastern dresses. It consists of a long skirt, a bustier, and a sash draped over one shoulder. Urban women usually wear it with high-heeled shoes and fancy jewelry or handbags. On the other hand, the traditional apparel for men includes a dress, a shirt tucked into a wrapped long skirt. Men usually wear a necklace, particularly during weddings. King's clothing. The Rwandan king's way of dressing and adorning themselves was elaborate and flamboyant. Mm. After independence, however, all vestiges of monarchy and symbols of royalty and power, including the royal drums, were dismantled. However, some of those symbols, like the beaded crown, igisigo, have been revitalized since 1994, especially in marriage ceremonies during the introductory phase, Gusabano Gukwa. The bride puts a reproduction of the royal crown on her husband's head. Oh, this is some. The bride puts a reproduction of the royal crown on her husband's head. The royal crown was a bonnet entirely covered with beads. With, wow, this is nice. Beads with fringes in front falling on the face with varied density. These beads were not locally made. This indicates that Rwanda participated in transatlantic trade to obtain them. Many pre-colonial kings dressed in garments made from leopard skin and leather sandals. Royal garments were adorned with a ceremonial robe and included a ring. Dance dress. Dancing has been an important traditional, social, and cultural activity of Rwandan people for many centuries. Each dance style has its own special costume. The Inore dance, for example, is an ancient warrior dance which used to be performed to celebrate victory in wars. Dancers would perform exclusively for the king in his palace. Today, Inore dance troupes are found throughout Rwanda and perform for everybody, especially tourists. The colorful costume of Inore dancers consists of long or short skirt, ankle bands, and headbands made of different beads. Headdresses with grass wigs, small hand-painted shield and sticks which represent spears. Dance troupes wear long skirts with beaded belts worn across their chests and bells attached to their ankles. The tambourines or drummers wear short skirts and beaded belts across their chest and shoulders. Women dancers wear ceremonial clothing like the traditional mishanana or imikenyero, a sash draped over one shoulder, worn over a long skirt and a well-fitted shirt. Yeah. From traditional to modern. Nowadays in Kigali, it's easier to find a multiplicity of dress styles, especially among the youth, from the secondary school students in his uniform to the Rasta artist with dreadlocks, from the Protestant girl with long skirts and natural hair to the seductive lady in miniskirt or tight trousers and straight hair. Respectively, these types represented the defense of the status quo and solid opposition to it by drawing upon global fashion and styles known by young people through the use of both mainstream and social media. Moreover, an increasing number of young designers have been trying to develop a local small but promising fashion industry, relying especially on wax printed fabrics. Once used to make only informal clothing, ibitenge are now used to produce high fashion clothes with African flair. Igitenge. You can see different fabrics. Yeah. Uh, Traditional skins were gradually substituted with fabric cloth imported from Arab and Persian merchants along the east coast of Africa even before colonial times. The rural women, however, were and are still dressed with ibitenge, plural, a colorful wax printed fabric seen as the typical African textile. Arab, they're from Arab and Persia. The wax printing is a technique in the form of resist dyeing with wax, the latter preventing the dye from reaching to the whole of the fabric, creating beautiful colored patterns. Interestingly enough, the Igitenge is not of African origins at all. Instead, it has its roots in the Indonesian batiks that reached West Africa at the end of the 19th century when freed slaves who served the Dutch East India Army in the Southeast Asia went home wearing samples of these batik cloths. Oof, I have goosebumps. Which were highly appreciated by the local aristocracy. These handmade batiks were soon substituted by industrialized reproduction made in the Netherlands, which better suited the African context. With regard to colors and patterns, they spread all over the continent. Nowadays, all at the markets and many stores in Rwanda, it is possible to find different kinds and qualities of ibitenge of different provenance and prices. Yeah, it is good. I'm glad it became, you know, something like our own. Ooh, fashion. Look how beautiful this dress is. Kigali Fashion Week. One of the best locally organized annual events, the Kigali Fashion Week attracts designers from all over the world, bringing international trends and Rwandan design together. It was launched in 2012 by the House of Fashion in Kigali, a local company with the aim of exposing local designers and models to a wider audience coming from other parts of Africa, the Middle East, and the USA. Another aim of the company is to create the first schools of art in Kigali in order to nurture new generations of creative artists and designers. This is really good. Visual art and craft. Look, pottery, my favorite. Rwanda has a rich cultural heritage, which is apparent in the diversity of crafts, art forms, dance, music, and poetry. Among the most popular crafts are pottery, basketry, painting, jewelry, wood carving, and metalworks. Most of these originated as functional items rather than purely for decoration. Today, art and craft are produced throughout Rwanda, with woven baskets and bowls being especially common. Rwandan crafters are also renowned for the banana leaf craft that are widely available. The southeast of Rwanda is known for imigongo, a unique cow dung art which dates back to when the region was part of the independent Gisaka kingdom. Yeah, you can see they're doing something of the basketry, sculpture, and everything. Basketry. We'll see what these beautiful baskets. They are amazing and beautiful. Basketry is an important and widespread Rwandan handicraft. In the past, the technique of weaving vegetable fibers, reeds, agave bark, grass, bamboo, sisal, and papyrus or cypress was pressed down from mother to daughter. Baskets, platters, and mats were traditional woven using several methods and decorated with graphic patterns. Baskets served as storage containers for personal objects, clothes, or jewels, ritual objects, and food and seeds. Platters were used to sieve rice or beans or to dry sorghum seeds. Mats functioned as carpets and room dividers in noble houses, as can be seen in the reconstruction of a royal palace and compound of in the Ethnographic Museum of Rwanda in Huye. The most famous type of Rwandan basket work is the igiseke, a lidded basket still used in wedding ceremonies today to carry gifts. Traditional baskets and contemporary woven products such as wallets, bags, earrings, and decorative baskets are among typical souvenirs that tourists can buy in Rwanda. Several state programs, NGOs, and local cooperatives are promoting the basket weaving industry as a way of advancing women's development through the revival and the marketing of the cultural tradition. Agaseke peace basket. These woven grass baskets have been used in Rwandan household and culture ceremonies for generations, deeply rooted in Rwandan culture. The baskets are used as containers to transport food and to store items, including jewelry. Agaseke, or in its plural form, uduseke, also known as ibirongoranwa in Kinyarwanda, are often referred to as wedding baskets and are among the most desired gifts to brides on their wedding day. Today, the Agaseke peace basket is one of the Rwanda's most popular handicraft and is sold worldwide. Although they have been used for generations, it's only recently that they have become internationally sought after. Following the 1994 genocide, the women of Rwanda decided to use these baskets as symbol of peace and to weave unity amongst their community. The woven geometric zigzag pattern represents people holding hands in peace. The Agaseke symbol of peace is so important to the culture of Rwanda that an image of this basket can be found on the Rwandan national emblem. Yeah, if you have seen our emblem. Agaseke is also a symbol for wife in the family, mutima w'urugo, which means the heart of the family, because it guarantees her the family secrets. Agaseke translates into no one can see in your heart and refers to the image of the basket, which closes with a lid, thus symbolizing the trust of keeping family secrets. Traditionally, baskets are made of sisal, the fiber from the agave plants. These fibers give baskets their characteristic pale gold color, traditionally black dye, produced by boiling the roots and seeds of the urukanji plant or banana flowers. It is used to create contrasting designs. These days, a far wider range of colors and patterns can be seen than in the past, and the popularity of the piece basket has introduced a palette of colors and even a range of souvenir sizes. The Agasete Peace Basket is a symbol of generosity, gratitude, and compassion and unity amongst the people of Rwanda. Imigongo art. I love art. Look how beautiful these geometric shapes are. Dating back to the 19th century, Prince Kachira, living in the province of Chibungo, now part of the Eastern Province, is credited with inventing imigongo, a technique of decorating the interior walls of courtyards and exterior walls of the houses. Although it's found throughout Rwanda, imigongo art is most common in the southeast of the country, around Ngoma and Chirehe near the border with Tanzania. Imigongo art is created as a process. A design is drawn onto a wooden board before being formed into a relief shape by shaping and applying cow dung to the board. Once completed, it is baked, drying the dung and merging it into the board. A single neutral base color is painted over the entire dry dung board before being painted into the traditional geometric design or the brightly painted modern design, completing the artwork. Traditionally, the dung is dried and mixed with organic dyes to create mostly black, white, and red paints. This mixture is applied by women to walls, pottery, or canvas in the spiral form, or geometric designs. It is worth paying a visit to a Migongo Art Cooperative near the Rusumo Falls border with Tanzania. Here you can see artists at work. I must go. Pottery, pottery, pottery. You can see how beautiful these pots are. Said to be the most ancient Rwandan form of craft, pottery was introduced by the original people of the region. Archaeological excavations have revealed the presence of pottery remains from the 18th century BC. Yeah, we got some. Traditional ceramics included jugs and containers for storing and cooking food. Today, a variety of diverse objects ranging from pots and teacups to candle holders is produced in the studios scattered around the country. Among them are pottery Gatagara in Ruhango district, southern Rwanda, not far from Nyanza, which was founded in 1970s. Wow! And pottery Rugerero in Rubavu, northwestern Rwanda. Unlike basketwork, pottery is produced by both women and men. Traditionally, the girls learned to make pottery from a young age. These pots, like baskets, were made for household use, such as storing food and liquids. The pots crafted by men were mostly used for ceremonial rituals. A common pottery technique used in Rwanda is the coil technique. Clay is formed into long strips which are coiled to form a pot base, and then further strips are stacked to form the sides. The pot is smoothed and shaped before being patterned and decorated, then baked. Today, most of the potters are members of a community of potters, Koporwa, La Communauté de Potiers du Rwanda. The pottery from Rwanda is made to a very high quality and has exceptional variety and ornately decorated, usually very large pots. Banana leaf craft. We can do anything from anything, literally. The banana is integral to the Rwandan lifestyle. As a staple part of the diet and a key ingredient in the banana beer, banana leaves have a number of uses in daily life in Rwanda. Not least of which they are used in local craft by cutting the banana leaves into strips and drying them. Throughout the country, banana leaf crafts can be found from wall hang pictures, cards, and small sculptures to household items such as tea trays or even larger items such as furniture. Contemporary art. Oh, it's like modern. By Emmanuel Muranga. Rwanda's history of visual art started with experimentation with migongo and patterns in basket weaving, but it was not until the mid 1980s that visual art began to expand its horizons. Young artists from Rwanda who were living in other East African countries, now refugees returning to the country after 1994 genocide, returned with energy and passion. With no formal art spaces or studios, the artists practiced informally and independently and displayed their work in craft shops. Over time, the artists were commissioned to provide artwork for the hotels such as Umubano and Mil Collins. These artists combined with graduates from a newly opened Nyundo School of Art outside Rubavu represented a vast network of talent, but the artists remained independent and unknown, with lack of space and exposure a significant issue. The turn of the millennium at the last saw an emergence of an energetic art scene. A group of East African artists took over the center of Chimihurura roundabout in Kigali, where they displayed their paintings and sculptures and put on live art performances. It was the first time that contemporary art had any real exposure in the country. With art a growing trend, the scene was filled with self-taught artists striving to put their name on the map. Galleries and studios began to pop up around the city, but it was hard to sell works, and galleries came and went. By 2007, trends had changed. The creation of the Rwanda Development Board made it easy to do business and start and maintain a gallery. In addition, the tourism sector has reached a critical mass, providing clients to make art a viable business. But the RDB not only affected business, it drastically changed art itself. For years, paintings had been limited to traditional subjects such as dancers and gorillas. The peace and stability in the land combined with a new young talent and sophisticated foreign taste enabled Rwandan art to explode. Artists had the freedom to explore abstract, non-traditional subjects as never before. Today, contemporary African art is emerging on the international scene, and there is no movement more grassroots than in Rwanda. Studios art centers, and galleries can be found throughout Kigali. Among them, Inema Art Center, Oburanga Art Center, Isho Art Center, Ivuka Art Studio, and Inganzo Art Gallery. Art in Rwanda has transcended the country's past and points to its future. It is rare to find a negative or dark piece of art in Rwanda, whether a dance or a canvas. Rwandan art focuses on beauty, happiness, and positive energy. Yes! Art is not just a hobby, it is a survival skill, a way to visualize and celebrate a bright future. With established galleries now thriving, Rwandan art is helping the country's development by contributing to a creative economy. Centers have gone from bringing artists together to training the next generation in arts and making culture available to everyone. Rwandan art is not only a driver of the national economy but also a force within the international art scene, growing, expanding, and challenging the global movement. Random dance music and poetry. Yo, 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 yo. See how the dance is looking. It's beautiful. Before the introduction of writing during colonial times, traditional Rwandan society centered through oral traditions, poetry, music, and dance. The most developed of the arts were the vehicles with which Rwandans preserved their history, culture, roles, and customs for memory. A huge body of oral literature, both royal and commoner, is the main source of Rwandan pre-colonial history and culture. Vansina wrote an outline of the most important pre-colonial oral traditions, which is summarized in the section that follows. I mean, you will need to get you this book. Look, you need to read this book. It has a lot of rich information about our culture. So everything is divided into poetry. There's poetry, oral tradition, royal poetry, the oral traditions that has pastoral poems, hunters poetry, beekeepers poetry, lullabies, and consolation songs, and then proverbs. So in the poetry in Rwanda is quite different from the Western concept, where a poet composes verses in isolation. Oratory is an integral part of Rwandan poetry, and traditionally, a poet is also a skilled performer. Royal power was legitimized and celebrated through three major oral genres: the Ubgiru, the Ubucurabwenge, and the Ibisigo. Oral tradition, royal poetry. The royal code Ubgiru constituted the fundamental role of the kingdom. It contained all the secrets of the rituals and traditions connected to the implementation of the king's power and its protection. Before this code was transcribed and interpreted by the scholars, the guardians of this knowledge were a small number of court dignitaries, Abiru, singular Umwiru, who had a great influence on the queen mother, and the king himself, counterbalancing their authoritarian power. Ubucurabwenge were the royal genealogical list poems that celebrated the deeds of the kings, starting with the more recent kings and recalling the history of the founders of the royal dynasty. Finally, Ibisigo was a form of poetry in which both the living and deceased kings were celebrated, usually through the use of the highly complex symbolic language. This ancient form of poetry was reconstructed and developed by the Queen Mother Nyirarumaga, the mother of King Ruganzu Ndori, who founded an institute of royal poetry in Ntebe y'Abasizi, the seat of poets, where young poets were taught how to compose and preserve ibisigo. Other oral traditions. Other oral traditions, indirimbo and ibyivugo, are connected to the military life of pre-colonial times. Indirimbo, a term that is today means song in English, originally signified a war chant that glorified the army and an individual for his bravery in combat. Ibyivugo is a sort of autopanegyric poem that was composed and performed by warriors during the monarchical period to praise their own courage and their deeds on the battlefield. Based on the stylized improvisation, Ibyivugo are still performed by civilian men in a high tone of voice and very fast. This style is encountered today in some traditional dances and during marriage rituals. Pastoral poems, amazina y'inka, were also recited at the court to describe the feats of the warriors and praise the royal herds. Ibitekerezo and amakuru were historical tales, respectively relating events taking place before the end of Kigeli Rwabugiri's reign, the end of the 19th century, and after that time, they would either be composed by official court poets or be popular tales widely known and passed on by commoners. Hunters' poetry. Bow hunting and hunting with dogs was an activity practiced by all social groups in Rwanda, respectively in the bush and forest, and in the valleys or swamp. The related poems called Amahiji Muheto, Chants of the Bow, and Amayogera, Hunting Dog Exploits, talk about the forest, the game, and the hardship endured by hunters and their dogs, usually using allusions and hermeneutic language. Hermeneutic. Bookkeeper's poem, Amavumvu. Poems in praise of bees' honey, from which medicines and hydromel were made. Lullabies and consolation songs. The same term, igihozo, which comes from the verb guhoza, to calm, indicates the songs used to help children to fall asleep, as well as the songs such as sung by friends and sisters to comfort the bride who was about to leave her home to join her husband. Finally, proverbs, imigani, are an important source of information encapsulating the values and principles on which society was based. Poems were usually performed in the court and or in the intimacy of the domestic space, generally accompanied by musical instruments such as the traditional harp or zither inanga. These days, public recitations of poetry are still popular and skill in any form of public speaking. For instance, ceremonial and political oratory is highly admired and passed on from generation to generation. In addition, the ancient oral tradition is merged with contemporary and global trends in the artistic sphere of the capital. On the last Wednesday of every month, at an event known as Spoken Word, young Rwandan poets and performers gather at various hotels in Kigali and practice a fusion of poetry, hip-hop, storytelling, and other forms of self-expressions. Music. Music has always played an important role in all aspects of life in Rwanda, and there is a strong oral tradition of storytelling. All major events are accompanied by traditional songs and dances. Weddings, birth celebration, traditional baptism, guterekera, anniversaries, launching a new project, and political parties, and the welcoming of important visitors. The 5 to 8 rhythm distinguishes Rwandan music from that of other African countries. While the dancers perform, members of the audience clap their hands, providing the rhythm and encouraging the dancers. Traditional musical instruments. According to Ganselman's ethnomusicology, okay. According to Gansman's ethnomusicological study, traditional instruments, in addition to the harps, inanga, and other chordophones, can be grouped in the following categories: membranophones, which include several kinds of drums, ingoma; ielophones, traditional horns and trumpets; a large number of idiophones, which includes ankle rattles and little bells. The traditional Rwandan music ensemble, which accompanies the Intore dancers, is called Amakondera and is made up of 5 different types of horns and 2 types of drums. You can see the drums here. Contemporary music in Rwanda. Over time, traditional Rwandan music has been combined with more contemporary influences. Popular music started to be produced in 1980s with artists like Ben Kairanga, Masabo, Susi Kairebwa, and the famous Imara Orchestra, which used some traditional instruments. In some bars in Kigali today, this old-style live music known as Igisope can be enjoyed over the weekend. One of these venues is a fantastic restaurant in front of Kigali State Tower in the city center. Contemporary Rwandan music draws its inspiration largely from hip-hop, Afrobeat, reggae, and gospel. There are a number of annual events such as Kigali Up and the Primus Guma Guma Superstar, which is sponsored by the local brewery Bralirwa. Every year in a jury selects well-known local artists who compete all over the country. You can see the event Kigali Up. Each year in July, the Kigali Up Music Festival transforms the Amahoro Stadium grounds into a miniature village. Over the course of one weekend, spectators are enthralled by live music and entertainment featuring Rwandan and international artists. Dance. Dance is without doubt the most spectacular expression of Rwandan arts. Every school and university in the country has its own dance troupe, Itorero. And, I was in one. Yeah. And dancers accompanied by drumming form a major part of the entertainment during official and traditional ceremonies. According to Nkurikiyinka in his book entirely dedicated to dance, this art stems from the composite nature of Rwandan society, taking inspiration from all of its traditional economic activities such as agriculture, cattle keeping, and pottery. In addition, music and dance traditionally served as a variety of different purposes. They boosted the courage of the pre-colonial warriors in battle. They celebrated love and or joy, and are still means of praising leaders, kings, and politicians, and of communicating national political ideals of peace or progress through music and dance. Fathers and mothers taught their sons and daughters respectively the male virtues of courage, self-denial, creativity, and pride, and female ones of sweetness, tranquility, and sensitivity. Their importance was therefore cultural, social, and political. Rwandans are known all over the world for their unique dancers, and National Ballet and other Rwandan troupes have won several prizes in regional and international dance festivals and competitions. Rwanda was also chosen in the host country as the host country of the Pan-African Dance Festival FESPAD, which takes place every 2 years in Kigali, involving artists and troops from all over the continent. The most important Rwandan dances are umudiho, umushagiriro, and umuhamirizo. Umudiho, umushagiriro, umuhamirizo. Okay, you can see the differences here. So the dresses, and this is umudiho, umushagiriro, umuhamirizo. Umudiho, an energetic style of dance, the umudiho is characterized by high jumps, with the dancers rhythmically and energetically striking the soil with their feet. It is symbolically linked to agricultural work. It is a popular form of traditional dance, usually performed during ceremonies in villages. There is no clear distinction between the performers and the audience, as the latter are involved in clapping, singing, and dancing. Umushagiriro. The umushagiriro is distinguished by controlled and fluid movement. The dancers, usually girls or women, hold their torso and arms still while moving gracefully and slowly. Originally a court dance, it is now performed by professional troops for an audience which is not directly involved. Umuhamirizo. Better known as the Intore dance, the umuhamirizo is probably the most famous of the Rwandan dances. The dance mimics a battle and displays the strength and energy of the warriors. It is performed by men who are dressed as pre-colonial warriors with a blonde mane, waving a spear and wearing broad ankle bands. During the performances, it is common to hear the performers reciting ibyivugo. This dance was mainly learned by the Intore, the chosen ones, young men from the most aristocratic families of the kingdom, who were selected by the kings to receive training at court, itorero. Here, they were taught music, dance, and the art of oratory, which was considered essential for the formation of the military elites. Well, we'll stop here. My eyes are getting tight. You can see how small they are. Yeah, we'll continue again next time, but so far we have read 75 pages. Way to go. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if there's any other book you would like me to read for you, or any other recommendation of a nice book that I can read for myself. I like reading. So find this book, buy it, and have it by yourself. You can always read it and revisit it. Well, thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share.